Imagine a boy sneaking out at night, in silence, all the way to a hidden barn. Inside, there's no golden altar, no stained glass, just straw, a hidden priest, and a few candles. Outside, it's dangerous to be there. If they're discovered, the priest could be arrested. The boy doesn't understand a single word of the Latin the priest is praying, but he feels, without understanding it with his mind, that something enormous is happening in there. His name is John, and he's going to grow up to become one of the most sought-after priests in all of history, even though almost no one believed he would make it. Have you ever felt like you weren't smart enough for something you loved with your whole heart? Stay with us, because this story begins in a secret barn, and that barn is going to explain everything. John was born in 1786 in a humble farm in Dardilly, near the city of Lyon, France. His family was simple and deeply faithful. His mother taught him prayers again and again with great patience. At 17, he still couldn't read very well. Memorizing was much harder for the other boys in the village, but he knew dozens of prayers by heart just from repeating them so many times with his mother. In those years, France was living through a revolution, and priests had to hide just to celebrate Mass. John's family traveled in secret, sometimes very far, just to be near Jesus in the Eucharist. 2 hidden nuns privately taught him everything he needed for his first communion. John wasn't the smartest boy in the village, but he was, without a doubt, the most determined to be close to God. And that quiet determination was going to lead him somewhere he himself couldn't yet imagine. When he grew up, John had one enormous desire. He wanted to become a priest. But the road wasn't easy for him. He was older than the other students, and Latin was an enormous struggle. He studied day and night, repeating every word 20, 30 times just to remember it. And just when he finally began to make progress, an order arrived that stopped everything. Napoleon's army was drafting him for war. John had to leave his books behind and head toward a destiny nobody could have predicted. A few days into the march, John fell ill and was separated from his group of soldiers. A stranger offered to guide him back, but instead led him to a hideout in the mountains, among other men who were also fleeing the war. John lived in hiding for 14 months under a false name, teaching the village children to pray while staying hidden. To hide, John used a fake name, Jerome Vincent. For over a year, the future most sought-after saint in France lived hidden in a mountain village, teaching catechism under a name that wasn't even his own. When amnesty was finally granted to everyone who had gone into hiding, John was able to go home and pick up the dream he had never abandoned. But the hardest part hadn't come yet. John finally entered the seminary to study and become a priest. But after 3 years, his own teachers made a painful decision. They dismissed him. He simply couldn't grasp the complicated theology he was supposed to learn. John felt his dream shatter into 1,000 pieces. But the bishop who had heard about him noticed something no exam could measure: a firm, steady heart, deeply given over to God. And he decided to ordain him priest anyway, because sometimes what's needed isn't memory, it's a heart that refuses to give up. On August 13th, 1815, the boy who couldn't memorize finally became a priest. In 1818, John was sent to a tiny village called Ars, barely 230 people. His bishop warned him, "There is almost no love of God in that place. Go and put it there." John arrived and found that the people of Ars almost never went to Mass. They had forgotten Jesus. So John did something nobody expected. He spent long hours alone, kneeling before the tabernacle, in silence. He didn't say much. He simply stayed there, looking at the little red lamp, letting Jesus speak to him first. And that was his secret, the one nobody else knew.
Everything John was about to give to others, he first received there, in silence, before the Eucharist. That silent secret was about to turn him into the most sought-after priest in all of France. Little by little, the people of Ars began to change, and soon the news spread across the whole country. People from all over France traveled for days just to confess with him, because they said John could see straight into the heart, as if he could read souls, without needing big words. John spent up to 16 hours a day in the confessional, listening to every single person as if they were the most important person in the world. The line to confess with him wrapped around the village square day after day, year after year. At night, strange noises woke him. His bed even caught fire once with no explanation. John just joked that it was the devil, furious about all the souls slipping away from him, and he'd simply go back to sleep. He also opened his home for orphaned children who had no family. He gave it a special name, La Providence, because he trusted that God would always provide what was needed. And one day at La Providence, God showed him exactly that, in a way nobody could explain. One day at La Providence, they ran out of flour to make bread for all the children. John simply told them, "Use the little you have," and he began to pray. The small amount of flour kept going and going and going until it filled the whole house with bread, as if it had never run out. John served in Ars for 41 years without resting until the very last day of his life. He died on August 4th, 1859, after giving his entire life, hour after hour, to listening and loving. And now here's the best part. What does the story of this boy who couldn't memorize have to do with you and me today? Reflection. 1. John wasn't the smartest or the most talented, but he had something nobody could take away, a heart determined to love God no matter what. You don't need to be perfect to draw close to God either. You just need to be determined, just like John. 2. John's secret was in the tabernacle, and that same Eucharist is still waiting for you today, in any church at any moment. Remember the boy in the secret barn who didn't understand the Latin but felt the love of God? The story ends right where it began. Stay for the last 30 seconds. Many years earlier, a boy snuck out at night to a barn, not understanding the Latin the hidden priest was praying. Now you know what that boy became. The priest who listened to all of France, who could read souls without needing big words. John Vianney was canonized in 1925, and today he's the patron saint of every priest in the world. Have you ever felt not good enough for something? Tell us in the comments. And if you want to meet the next superhero of faith, subscribe now.